Welcome to Introduction to Logic with Dr. Cecilea Mun. Today's topic is statements. What are they? How are they different? And what are some different kinds of statements? In our previous lessons, we discussed how arguments have three basic features. First, they are made of at least two statements. Second, they have at least one conclusion. Third, they have at least one premise. If you have yet to participate in that lesson, you might want to do so before continuing with this one. You can find a link to it at the top right corner of your current screen and in the description box below. Because we know that arguments are made up of statements and have at least one premise and at least one conclusion, we also know that an argument's premises and conclusion are always statements. Since arguments are made up of statements, it is very helpful to know about statements. This is why logic, as the science of arguments, also includes the study of statements. But what are statements? A statement is a type of sentence. A sentence can be understood as an element of the English language, which typically begins with a capital letter and ends with a kind of end punctuation, such as a period, question mark, or exclamation mark. As such, it also typically conveys some kind of information and follows the rules of English grammar, although not necessarily, since sometimes people make mistakes with their sentences. As a side note, other languages also have sentences and statements, but I'll stick with speaking primarily about logic within the context of English throughout my lessons. In another previous lesson, we spoke of the different types of sentences and how arguments are different compared to these other types of sentences. And two statements were given as examples of a type of sentence. If you have yet to participate in that lesson, click on the link at the top right corner of your current screen or in the description box below. Here are two more examples of sentences. The first sentence is, the temperature is minus 24 degrees Fahrenheit. The second sentence is, what is your favorite holiday? Notice how they both begin with a capital letter, end with an end punctuation, convey some kind of information, and follow the rules of English grammar. These four features are what make a sentence a sentence. But not all sentences are statements. Consider our two examples again. Sentence 1 is a statement, but sentence 2 is not. Sentence 2 is a question. So, how are statements different from other kinds of sentences? First, although statements are a kind of sentences, they are different from other kinds of sentences, such as questions, explanations, and arguments, especially because of the intention behind their use. The intention behind the use of a statement is to assert that something is true. In other words, when someone makes a statement, they are saying that whatever the statement is about is true. Of course, simply saying or asserting that something is true does not necessarily make it true, but this makes no difference as to whether a sentence is or is not a statement. Second, because statements are assertions that what the statement is about is true, statements can be true or false. A statement is true if what it is about accurately reflects the way the world is, and a statement is false if what it is about does not accurately reflect the way the world is. So, when someone makes a statement, we can still ask whether or not that assertion is actually true or false based on whether or not it accurately reflects the way the world is. True and false are called truth values. Statements can also have an unknown truth value. In these cases, although these statements can be true or false, we do not know whether they are true or false. But us not knowing whether a statement is true or false makes no difference as to whether a statement has a truth value, since us believing one way or another is not what makes a statement have a truth value or what makes a statement true or false. So, all statements have truth values, even the ones we do not know are true or false, and that is all a sentence needs in order to be a statement. So, what essentially differentiates statements from other kinds of sentences is that the intention behind the use of a statement is to assert that something is true, and because of this, all statements have a truth value. It can be true or false, even though we might not know what its truth value actually is. Now that you know what essentially makes a sentence a statement, let's consider some different kinds of statements. Statements can be categorized in various ways. For example, as we discussed in the previous lesson about how arguments are different, statements can be categorized as a premise or a conclusion of an argument, depending on the function that the statement plays in relation to the argument. If a statement functions in an argument as the main point of that argument, then it is considered a conclusion. If a statement functions in an argument as a reason that is intended to support the truth of the main conclusion, then the statement is considered a premise. Categorizing statements in this way is to categorize them in relation to the function they play in an argument. We'll talk more about how to categorize statements into premises and conclusions in our next lesson. For now, just note that this is one way of categorizing statements. Another way to categorize statements is based on their structure. We'll talk a lot about different kinds of structures in logic, including the structure of statements and arguments. For now, we'll focus on statements. A statement can be structured in two different ways. They can be structured as categorical statements or as propositional statements. Categorical statements are statements about things in one category of things belonging or not belonging to another category of things. Here are some examples of categorical statements. All humans are mammals. No humans are mammals. Some humans are mammals. Some humans are not mammals. Notice how each statement is about things in one category belonging to another category of things. The first statement is about all things that are human belonging to the category of things that are mammals. This is called an A-type categorical statement. The second statement is about no things that are human belonging to the category of things that are mammals. This is called an E-type categorical statement. The third statement is about some things that are human belonging to the category of things that are mammals. This type of statement is called an I-type categorical statement. The fourth statement is about some things that are human not belonging to the category of things that are mammals. This is called an O-type categorical statement. Because these kinds of statements are about things that are in one category belonging to or not belonging to another category of things, we need to think about what is true of the category of things that a statement is about in order to determine if a categorical statement is true or false. These kinds of statements are different from what are called propositional statements. Propositional statements are statements about the way the world is or is not. Here are some examples of propositional statements. It is raining. It is not raining. It is raining and it is sunny. It is raining or it is sunny. If it is raining, then I will take my umbrella. Notice how propositional statements are not necessarily about categories of things belonging to other categories of things. Some propositional statements assert that something is the case, such as the first statement, it is raining. This type of propositional statement is a simple propositional statement. Others assert that something is not the case, such as statement 2, it is not raining. This second type of propositional statement is called a negation. Another type of propositional statement asserts that two things are both the case, such as statement 3, it is raining and it is sunny. This type of propositional statement is called a conjunction. A third type of propositional statement asserts that one or another thing can be the case, such as statement 4, it is raining or it is sunny. This kind of propositional statement is called a disjunction. A final type of propositional statement asserts that if something is or is not the case, then another thing is or is not also the case, like the fifth statement, which asserts that if it is raining, then I will take my umbrella. This type of propositional statement is called a conditional statement. Because categorical statements and propositional statements treat thinking about aspects of the world in these different kinds of ways, each category of statements can be associated with a different kind of logical system. Categorical statements are typically associated with the system of categorical logic, and propositional statements are typically associated with a system of propositional logic. To some extent, you can think of each of these kinds of logical systems as providing us with a way to analyze and evaluate the kind of statement that pertains to each, along with the kind of arguments that are constituted by each kind of statement. As you continue through this course, you will learn how to use categorical logic to analyze and evaluate categorical statements and arguments, as well as propositional logic to analyze and evaluate propositional statements and arguments. For now, just keep in mind that categorical statements and propositional statements can be associated with their own kind of logical system. But before we get to those lessons, it is important to recognize that statements are elements of both categorical logic and propositional logic, and regardless of which logical system one is working with, statements in each logical system can be true or false. In other words, regardless of whether or not we are working with the system of categorical or propositional logic, statements in each logical system will have a truth value. This is because, as we discussed earlier, all statements have truth values. Consider, again, our examples of different types of categorical statements. All humans are mammals. No humans are mammals. Some humans are mammals. Some humans are not mammals. Each of these statements can be true or false. To determine whether a categorical statement is true or false, you need to think about whether the statement accurately reflects the way the category that the statement is about actually is in the world. Go ahead and pause this video and see if you can determine the truth value for each statement, and resume the video once you are done. Here are the answers to whether each categorical statement that was given is true or false. Go ahead and pause the video to make any corrections you need to, and then resume the video when you are done. If you got some of the truth values wrong, don't worry. You'll learn more about how to determine the truth value of categorical as well as propositional statements in a later lesson. What matters now is that you noticed that each of these statements have a truth value. Now consider the following examples. All Baffleg are codswallop. Some Baffleg are codswallop. Some Baffleg are not codswallop. No Baffleg are codswallop. Can you tell me whether each of these statements have a truth value? I am not asking you to determine the truth value of each statement. I'm simply asking you if these categorical statements have a truth value. The answer is yes. Recall that you not knowing what a statement's truth value is does not mean it does not have a truth value. So, even if you don't know what a Baffleg or a codswallop is, that makes no difference as to whether a statement about these kinds of things have a truth value. This is because when someone makes a statement, they are asserting that whatever that statement is about, regardless of whether you know what that statement is about, is true. So, we can always ask whether what they stated is actually true or false, regardless of whether or not you know what the statement is about. Now, consider these examples of propositional statements. I have a piffle. I do not have a piffle. I have a piffle and I have a blatherskite. I have a piffle or I have a blatherskite. If I have a piffle, then I have a blatherskite. Do each of these statements have a truth value? Once again, the answer is yes, and for the same reasons that the examples of categorical statements have truth values. As statements, these propositional statements are assertions that something is true. So, regardless of whether or not we can determine their truth value or know what a statement is about, we can still ask whether the statements are actually true or false. So, it has a truth value, and this is one of the things that make a statement a statement. Now, let's summarize the main points of this lesson, and then follow up with an exercise to help you practice applying what you learned before we bring this lesson to an end. The main points of this lesson are as follows. 1. It's important to know about statements when studying logic since arguments are made up of statements. 2. Statements are types of sentences. 3. One thing that differentiates a statement from other kinds of sentences, such as questions, explanations, and arguments, is the intention of their use. Statements are used to assert that something is true. Because statements are used to assert that something is true, all statements have truth values, regardless of whether or not you know what the truth value is or whether you know how to determine the statement's truth value. 5. Statements can be categorized in different ways. One way to categorize them is according to how they function in an argument. Categorizing statements in this way is to categorize them as premises or conclusions. 6. Another way to categorize them is according to their structure. 2 ways to categorize statements according to their structure are as categorical statements and as propositional statements. 7. Categorical statements are about things in one category of things belonging to or not belonging to another category of things, and there are 4 types of categorical statements. A-type categorical statements, such as all humans are mammals. E-type categorical statements, such as no humans are mammals. I-type categorical statements, such as some humans are mammals. And O-type categorical statements, such as some humans are not mammals. 8. Propositional statements are statements about the way the world is or is not, and there are 5 types of propositional statements. A simple statement is a statement like it is raining. A negation, which is a statement like it is not raining. A conjunction, such as a statement like it is raining and it is sunny. A disjunction, such as a statement like it is raining or it is sunny. and a conditional statement, which is a statement like, if it is raining, then I will take my umbrella. Now, let's put what you learned to the test to help you practice applying what you learned. In the next slide, I will provide you with some instructions. After you've understood the instructions, pause the video and do what was instructed. When you're done, resume the video, and I will go through the answers with you. Instructions. I will give you a list of the various terms you were introduced to in this lesson. Create a concept map of how these terms are related to the other terms in the list, based on what you learned in this lesson. To create a concept map, organize the words on the list, with the words representing higher order categories at the top and those representing lower order categories below the ones representing the higher orders to which the lower order categories belong. Then place a line connecting the higher order category with a lower order category. For example, let's say I gave you the following list of words: tree, plant, fern, pine tree, animal, human, mammal, cow, and fish. A word that represents a higher order category is plant. This is because other categories on this list, such as tree, fern, and pine tree, are categories that belong to the plant category. So, we would place the word plant at the top, and the words tree, fern, and pine tree would be placed below the word plant. Also, the word tree is a higher order category compared to the word pine tree, since the category of pine tree belongs to the category of tree. So, we would also place the word tree above the word pine tree. Now, we can place a line connecting the word pine tree to the word tree to illustrate that a pine tree is a type of tree, and another line connecting the word tree to plant, since a tree is a type of plant. We can also use a different line to connect the word fern to the word plant, since a fern is a type of plant, but it is not a type of tree. Notice that we still have some words left over. That's because animal, human, mammal, cow, and fish are categories that do not belong to the highest order of the category of words we already mapped out, which is the plant category. So, we need to create a separate concept map for these remaining words. Since human, mammal, cow, and fish belong to the category of animal, this tells us that animal is the highest order category among the remaining categories. So, we will place animal at the top. Also, since humans and cows are types of mammals, that makes mammal a higher order category compared to human and cow, but mammal is a lower order category than animal. So, we will place the word mammal below the word animal, but above the words human and cow. Fish are a type of animal, but they are not a type of mammal. So, we will place the word fish under the word animal, but not under the word mammal. Now, we will place a line connecting each word to the higher order category that they belong to. The result will be one line connecting the category animal to the category mammal, and another line connecting the category animal to the category fish, and then one line connecting the category mammal to the category human, and another line connecting the category mammal to the category cow. The result is a map of how the various concepts on the list are related and not related to each other. Notice how there are two concept maps here. Can you think of a higher order category that you can use to combine the two concept maps? How about the higher order category of living thing? If we add this category to the list, then it would combine the two concept maps, since both plants and animals are kinds of living things. Now that you know how to create a concept map, the following is a list of terms you were introduced to in this lesson: sentence, statement, categorical statement, propositional statement, A-type statement, E-type statement, I-type statement, O-type statement, simple statement, negation, conjunction, disjunction, conditional statement. Pause the video and create a concept map of these terms. Make sure you use all the terms given on the list and do not add any of your own terms, like you did with the example of a concept map. Your concept map should look something like this. Compare your concept map with mine, and then make any necessary corrections. And don't worry if you got some wrong. Remember, making mistakes is a part of the learning process. The following is an explanation of why your concept map should look like this one so you can learn from your mistakes. First, the category sentence is the highest order category to which all the other categories on the list belong. So, the word sentence should be placed at the top. The category statement is the next highest order category since a statement is a kind of sentence and all the other categories are kinds of statements. So, the word statement should be placed under the word sentence, with a line connecting the word sentence to the word statement. Under the word statement, you should have the words categorical statement and propositional statement, and a line should connect each of these words to the word statement, since these are both kinds of statements. Then, since A-type statement, E-type statement, I-type statement, and O-type statement are types of categorical statements, each of these words should be placed under the word categorical statement, with a separate line connecting the word categorical statement to each of these different types of categorical statements. Finally, the words simple statement, negation, conjunction, disjunction, and conditional statement should all be placed under the word propositional statement, with a separate line connecting the word propositional statement to each of these different types of propositional statements. This brings this lesson to an end. But do not stop applying what you learned here. One thing you might want to do to keep practicing what you learned is to try to identify statements and the different kinds of categorical and propositional statements that you learned as you read various things in your everyday life. You might also try creating concept maps of other groups of related words that you learn. You should find that doing so will help you improve your reading comprehension, as well as help you more readily remember what you read and the various concepts you mapped out. Thank you for your attention and
Hi there. This is Kung Fu Logic Kitty. I hope you learned a lot and keep up the good work.